What's up, everybody? Good afternoon. And you guys know what time it is. You guys know what it's all about. It is Victory Friday. And be it Victory Friday or if it were, say, Hangover Friday, I like to do the same thing. I like to take a look at Pro Football Focus, see what they have to say. Again, I'm not saying they're always going to get it right. I'm not saying they're always going to get it wrong, but I am saying they do some interesting, good work over there, and it's worth spending some time taking a look at it and at least comparing it to your assumptions and priors and expectations. All right, so we're going to start with the offense here, and this is obviously the side of the ball where nothing's going to look all that good. There's going to be very little positive to glean from this video, but I think it is worth having a gander at and at least trying to find something that can be talked about. So we're going to start with the offense. Please like this video if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're new. Click the bell for notifications. Become a channel member for $2 a month. Those are the best ways to help support the channel. And looking at the overall offense, it is what you would expect. There's a little bit of good stuff here at the top, a little bit. Some players that played noticeably well. There's a lot of bleh, and then there's a pretty noticeable chunk of bad. When you score 6 points, it's going to be bad. There's going to be a lot of negativity here. So we're going to start with the good stuff, though. There are 5 players that PFF singled out positively this week. Abe Lucas being the top among them, along with Charbonnet. So good for them. Maybe we don't win this game if they don't play as well as they did. And I think that I do think that you can glean some positivity from this game. Those are 2 relatively young players that are presumably an important part of the team going into 2025. Not so much for Noah Fant, maybe, but he was another guy they graded out fairly well, 74. Sure. I mean, he was. I don't think anybody had more catches than him in this game, right? So he did something right. And Charles Cross, who has become a mainstay near the top of these lists, having another good, respectable game, good, honest game. And our other running back, Kenny McIntosh, only 13 snaps, but graded out fairly well. They actually gave him a positive grade for his pass blocking, which is a big improvement from previous weeks. And I would say that we've got a little something cooking there as well. Now that he's getting opportunities, he's doing decent things with them. So basically, both starting tackles, both running backs, and your starting tight end, those were the bright spots according to Pro Football Focus this week. And that's where the positivity kind of stops after this one. They do think JSN played about average. Mostly it's the penalties, right? If he didn't pick up 2 penalties, it probably would have been a little bit more respectable. Same with DK Metcalf, by the way. They gave him an okay grade, but the penalties are going to kill you. AJ Barner also played okay. About at sea level. Not going to talk about Derek Young because it's 1 snap. Lockett, okay. Lomia, actually, with his best graded game in a while, he actually played, according to them, about average. Bobo, bleh. Oluwatimi, bleh. Laken Tomlinson, bleh. The PFF grades for him are finally starting to reflect what I see with my eyeballs. And that leaves 2 players that, according to PFF, played bad. So Gino Smith, for the first time in quite a while this year, gets a really bad PFF grade, which does make a pretty decent amount of sense. He barely tried to push the ball down the field. He did make 1 really bad throw that he got a little bit lucky on. And there just wasn't a lot of production, right? There just wasn't a lot of production to speak of. And the sacks were partially this game, I think, a result of him holding onto the ball. And we'll look at that later. PFF does actually have that in their data as well. So yeah, it's a very lifeless game, I would say, from the quarterback. And that was outdone only by Pharaoh Brown, who had a fumble. And what do you expect, right? You have a fumble in that game on a drive where we were maybe actually going to go finish that game off. We were about to drive and probably score. We were about to at least get into field goal range, and then he fumbles and changes the tenor of that game. That's tough to get past. So Yeah, there's not a lot good to talk about here. I said it yesterday. It's very hard to find players to single out for positivity on offense after that game. They did find a few guys, but you can see why we scored 6 points, man. It's hard to overcome all this. All right, so that's the overall grading. Let's take a look at Gino's passing chart, which tells us kind of what we already knew. He wasn't pushing the ball down the field at all. And here's what I'm going to say. This is what you get when Gino isn't taking any risks. Gino played very conservatively this game. He took sacks instead of trying to fit the ball into tight windows. He decided he wasn't going to try to push it down the field even when he had opportunities to. He basically tried to play a ultra conservative game, and you can see that. He tried to push the ball more than 10 yards down the field 4 times this whole game. 4 throws. And actually, he completed 3 of them, which, okay, I guess that's something, but just barely any real attempts to play quarterback the way the position was intended to be played. And that's kind of what you get with that game. You get a game where there's barely any scoring and everything's boring and you just punt the ball a lot. And in this offense right now, that's about the best that you can do when your quarterback is playing things that safe. Or you can get the Gino Smith that is trying to give his receivers chances to make plays, push it down the field, take risks, and you're going to get a quarterback who does what he does last week, where he throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns against an elite defense, but also mixes in a couple of turnovers. So it's one or the other, guys. In this offense, with this offensive line, with this offensive coordinator, in this circumstance, you can't have one thing and then say, I don't want the other thing. You can't say, I want the big plays, I want pushing it down the field, I want the risky throws, but I don't want any of the turnovers. So it's I think it's pretty clear what you would rather have, generally speaking. I'd rather take the high variance path. But my point is, if you're going to take the high variance path, you have to live with the negative results occasionally. And I'd rather have that than what I saw last night, where basically it was just, I'm not gonna ever really risk anything. We're just gonna play it very safe and hope it's enough. And you can see that the area of the field he hit the most was behind the line of scrimmage by a decent amount, right? Even the short stuff was like, what, 7 attempts. He had 10 attempts behind the line of scrimmage. You don't see that very often in the NFL. That's not really the kind of football that I want to see that often. Like, I think that him throwing a lot of short passes is probably good, but checking down over and over and over again to this degree, I don't think that's maybe it was good yesterday because of the weather, but generally speaking, this is I don't think this is better than him throwing the interceptions, but still actually making plays down the field. All right, so that's the passing chart. Want to take a look at the rushing direction, and you can actually see a pretty clear divide in between the stuff that worked and the stuff that didn't, right? Like, Seahawks had pretty good success running off left tackle, off left guard, middle right, and then they had mediocre success left end, and then no real success middle left or right guard or right tackle. It's all small sample sizes, but you can see the divide here. So there were some things that seemed like they worked. Running off the gap on the outside of Charles Cross seemed like it actually was fairly productive. I don't know why we didn't stick with that. Middle right, which is between Oluwatimi and Lomia, was actually really good. I don't know. It just seems to me that you could abandon the stuff that isn't working and stick with the stuff that does work. I understand that this stuff sometimes changes from week to week, but there's a pretty clear divide here. You had success in some areas, and I think you could have maybe stuck with it a little bit more than you did, even, especially in that weather. So that's rushing direction. Pass blocking. This is actually interesting, right? This doesn't happen that often for this team, but one thing you'll notice, none of the sacks were put on a blocker. So what PFF is saying is that pretty much every sack that, well, it was 3 sacks, and one of them was the play where Gino tripped and fell down on Zach Charbonnet's foot. But so it's only a couple of plays, but the sacks that he took were not on a blocker. They were on Gino. So again, this is what I'm saying. I don't really want to see that. I want to see the Gino who's willing to push it a little bit, and maybe it'll occasionally end in a turnover, but you will eventually break through, make plays, and actually get some points on the board. So like this is the kind of football that you play when you're just so scared of ever making a turnover that you take sacks instead. And it was only a few sacks, I know that, but you don't see this that often. Usually PFF will tell you that every or almost every pressure is the fault of the offensive line on this Seahawks team. But breaking it down, I mean, obviously nobody played especially bad. Abe Lucas allowed 2 quarterback hurries, and Charles Cross allowed 1 quarterback hit. So pretty clean from them. Laken Tomlinson, I mean, he didn't play a particularly good game. It looks like, relatively speaking, 3 pressures as a left guard is pretty but I don't have high expectations for him anyway. Lomia, clean. Still not graded well, but he didn't allow any pressures. Oluwatimi, 3 pressures, including 2 hits as a center. Pretty rough. We're not enthusiastic about that. Definitely don't like that. And that's it. 9 pressures allowed by this offensive line according to PFF. So they did put a lot of the pressures on Gino. And again, that's why I say when you play that style of football where you're not risking turnovers, it does result in a lot of pressures and sacks and hits that are on the quarterback's head. And I don't know if I think that's better. Run blocking. Again, this is something that I just like to look at to get a feel for zone versus gap. And you can see we did do more gap than zone in this game. Definitely notable. Not a big spread. It was like 60-40 overall. But definitely interesting to see the team lean back that way a little bit after what happened the previous week. Probably the right thing to do right now. I don't think we have a choice, especially with Ken Walker out. I could see the argument for Ken Walker being a zone-based back, but right now, gap it's the way that it needs to go. And you can see that nobody ran blocked all that well except for the tackles, I guess, and JSN, who, I mean, his ability to affect the game as a run blocker is minimal. So that's about it. Pretty nondescript good day. I mean, you score 6 points, you're not going to get great grading overall. But yeah, that's what I got. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. More videos later. I might be taking a little bit of a break after doing the other half of the PFF stuff. My tongue is actually really hurting me today. I got a sore on it. It hurts to talk really badly. So I may just make one more video and call it good. See you guys later. Go Hawks.